Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop.
What are you doing in my shop?
Hey, this is my shop.
Out!
No! So, I want to say a huge, welcome to Will's shop. This is not my shop, and this is William Walker from the William Walker Company. And we are in his shop today because he has this beautiful basketball. Why don't you tell us about this thing?
This is a cherry burl, one of many cherry burls that I got from my local sawyer. I have a very good relationship with him, and these were just some laps off of a big cherry tree that he took down, and he thought I'd like them, so he let me have them.
And we're going to turn them. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to cut this in half, and then we are going to turn this. Now, Will here is going to turn it on his lathe and do it in a very conventional method of a bowl turning. And I'm really interested to see how this burl is going to turn out, because you never know what you're going to get when you knock into these until you actually knock into it. But me, as I am a hand tool person, I'm going to turn it on the spring pole lathe. And so what we want to kind of do is show two different methods of doing it, the conventional method and the semi-traditional, semi-stupid hand tool method. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this, and you can compare and contrast and definitely go take a look at his video. And yeah, let's go for the ride. So I only had a few hours to be at Will's place, and figured we'd use the non-foot powered saw to cut this down. To be honest, the chainsaw makes it a lot faster. We need to cut this into basically a ball so that we can make two bowls out of it. And slicing off either end, then we can take it over the bandsaw and slice it. And I figured I would sabotage him, but I accidentally cut the wrong cord, and it kept on working. Oh well. So we cut this in half with the bandsaw. He'll get half, I'll get half, and the two will end up looking fairly similar. We tried to slice them away so that they kind of match each other. And I was blown away by the figure inside of this, the chatoyancy, the flares, just an absolutely beautiful piece of wood. Next thing I need to do once I get back to my shop is find where center is. So I'm going to be using this compass to trace around and find a good center point to try and get as big a circle as I can get out of this. And that way I can make sure, I ran off the side there, I need to move the point over a little farther and find the actual center. Once I get that, I can lock it in place and trim everything back to that circle that I drew. Now, I would love to have an elm stump in the shop. One of these days I'll get one, but until then I'll just use this chunk of slab that I have lying around. And I'm going to keep chopping things back until I get close to that circle. I would like to have a good hatchet. This is not a good hatchet. This is actually a hewing axe with a shortened handle. It doesn't work very well for this, but it's what I have, so I am going to use it. And I'm going to keep trimming everything back and try and make it as round as I can, try and make it as balanced as I can, because once I get it on this, the large majority of time is spent actually making this into a round that doesn't bounce around too much and actually will spin on the lathe. But the more time you can spend on this, the less time you're going to have to spend on the lathe. So definitely take your time to do that. Next thing I need to do is have a flat surface to attach the mandrel to. I could just leave it somewhat round, but I needed at least the center point where the mandrel connects to be flat, so I know that the mandrel is coming off at 90 degrees. So I used a scrub plane and then a larger mouth flattening plane, and took it all down to a surface that I could trust was relatively flat with the winding sticks. And then we can attach the mandrel. Now this is my first attempt at a mandrel, and I pounded in finishing nails, and yeah, I ended up making another one in the future. This was not the best method. I'll be covering that in a little bit here, but this kind of worked. I had one point in the middle so that I could line that up with my center point, and then the rest of them kind of bent in around. Finishing nails are not strong enough to connect the mandrel to the blank. Oh well. Next, we can center this up, and I want to be moving the tailstock point around and try and find center on the bottom side of the bowl. What I'm looking for is to make sure that the mandrel is actually turning on its center. The bowl will be out of center a little bit, but as long as that mandrel is spinning and not wobbling up and down, then I know it's okay. And you can see how it has a little bit of wobble, so I'm going to move the tailstock just a little bit until I get a point in the end of the bowl. Once I find out where that center point is in the end of the bowl, then I can wrap the cord around it and start playing with this. And here is where my mind was blown. How much force does it actually take to rotate this thing? Because this is about 9 pounds unbalanced. And I only have 2 wraps around on the cord. I ended up with like 3 or 4 eventually, so I get more friction from it, because you can see how it slides when I stop. And there's just a lot of force in that. So now we can actually start with the turning, and I'm using a roughing gouge, and I'm starting to learn the methodology for this, because it takes a lot more force than turning a spindle or other things like that. It all has to be a lot more coordination. All my body weight is moving to rotate this down, and then each stop it actually spins a little bit more. And so you can see how it's kind of working in and out. And every time I'm engaging the cut and then backing it out. Yeah, it was one of those moments. That once that mandrel failed on me, the nails bent. I ended up doing something a little bit bigger with some, I think they were 16 penny nails. They're bigger. Once I drive them in with 1 in the center and then 3 around that, I can cut off the head, and then after cutting off the head, I can file them down into a chisel point. The reason I want the chisel point is I want them to spread lengthwise with the grain and not across the grain, and so I can fit it into the wood without splitting apart the log. Once I get those cleaned out, then I can file them down, and they file fairly easily into these chisel points. It just takes a good bit of fiddling to get it in between, especially on this last one. Working around the others was a little more painful than I expected. Once I had that in place, then I can pound it into the wheel just like I did with before, and then start spinning this thing. And here you can start to see a little bit more of my learning ethos, and I was kind of playing with different tools and different methodologies and finding out what I like. The roughing gouge works fairly well. I ended up trying the roughing carbide. We'll see that a little bit later. But here you can kind of see I'm playing with how to engage this and what angle to keep it at. Finding that riding the bevel works very well for this, so that you're not cutting in the low spots, you're only cutting the high spots. And then also engaging and disengaging. See, I pull it back, and then I'll push it in, I'll pull it back, and I'll push it in, and I'll pull it back, and I'll push it in, and I'll pull it back, and I'll push it in. Yeah, I have about 4 hours on just roughing the outside of the bowl. It took a long time for turning, but I was very happy once I got it down. Here you can see I'm playing with the carbide bit. If I had my druthers, I would go out and get a set of hook knives. They're the traditional tool that is used for cutting this. They make it a little bit easier. They're actually a knife that cuts as opposed to a skewing blade or a carbide bit. Get nice curls from it. But alas, I don't have a set, so I'm going to be using what I have on hand. I even experimented with using the plane, which I actually like this. It was good for smoothing out the outside and getting a nice clean surface. It worked better than I thought. I just had to work at holding the lathe in place, because most of the time your hand that's holding the tool is holding the tool rest in place, and so it moves very well. This is just a different way to work it. Not great, but it was fun. Next thing I can do is to get the bowl gouge out and start working at the bottom of the bowl here. I want to have a ring around the outside that this bowl will sit on, and clean it up as close as I can to that live center. Then I'll come back in later and I'll show you how I clean up the live center. But I'm just coming in with the bowl gouge and relieving the space inside. Then the next step is rounding over the lip and starting it on the outside. And I want to actually kind of make this lip into a point. The outside edge ends up being about 1/4 inch thick. It's thicker at the bottom. It's almost about 3/4 inch at the bottom, tapering down to about 1/4 inch around the lip here. It's slightly rounded, but still coming to a point at the edge of the lip. I kind of like that appearance. Then we can start facing this off and getting a smooth surface to work on. And here I brought back in the carbide bit. I found this very useful here because I could use the side of it. It's a little harder to get my tool rest in there. But in this case, the carbides really came in useful here because you can work on the side of them very easily. And then at this point, it's a lot of stock removal. But surprisingly, the stock removal was a lot faster than smoothing the outside, because at this point, it's starting to get balanced. And it's starting to lose weight, so it's actually moving faster. It's not sliding as much, and it becomes far easier to turn. So I have the bowl gouge in here, and most all of the material on the inside was cleaned with the bowl gouge. You see how I'm using the side of it and working into it. I'm taking it back into a point. I'm leaving this mandrel extra here. It ends up being about 2.5 inches in diameter or so, and keeping it fairly even all the way back. And I'm just going to keep going on this until I am pleased with the thickness of the wall all the way down. It's about 3/4 inch thick at the bottom to about 1/4 inch thick. And see how you're occasionally you'll catch, and it becomes a bit of an issue because you have that catch that your tool always wants to stop on. If you take it light and take some easy passes, you can clean up those catches and get back to work. And it's kind of fun at this point because I have all these chips peeling off, and it's rather enjoyable. Getting back close to the bottom and just keeping an eye on everything, starting to smooth things out, starting to make everything the way I want it. The reason I'm only going down about 3/4 inch thick at the bottom here is I want to see more of that burl. So if I went much further, then a lot of that darker burl would disappear. Then as I get close to the end and I get the surfaces smoothed out, I'm going to use the chips on the floor to burnish this. So I'm going to burnish the inside and outside, and this is basically the sanding. I'm not going to use any sandpaper on this. I'm just going to rub it all down nice and smooth with the chips and burnish it. It's not a glass smooth surface like you would think of. You see the ridges from the tooling, but to the finger it feels smooth. Then the last thing I'm going to do on the lathe is come in with the detail tool, this detailed carbide tool. I will leave a link to all the tools that I'm using down below in the description if you want to see particularly what I'm using. This allows me to get way back into that point. And I want to take this point down to about 3/4 inch or a little smaller, and then hit it across the grain and knock off what is left over from the mandrel. And now I have a bowl. Just need to clean up that spot on the bottom, the inside and the outside. For this, I'm going to use a hook knife. This is a fantastic tool for getting inside things and carving out. A lot of fun here. I just have to be careful not to take off too much. Here you can see how wet this still is, as I'm just cutting down a little bit, and it's already that much darker underneath, so it's still a sopping wet bowl. After that, I can come in with the card scraper and smooth it out and give it a really nice, buttery, clean surface on there. And yeah, this is where I'm starting to get excited. The thing is finally coming together. I've spent hours and hours on this, and it's finally working out. For the bottom, I'm going to come in with a chisel and tap off the end. I tried just pushing it with my hand, and it didn't quite work so well. So clamping it between my knees and just making sure the chisel is pointed away from my body, this actually came off fairly easily, and I cleaned it out. Then I can clean off all those chisel marks and smooth out the bottom with a card scraper, and the bowl is done. Just needs some finishing. So for finishing, I'm going to use boiled linseed oil. Surprise, surprise. But I love the color it brings out in this, especially in the cherry. The later coats, just the color is so rich and gorgeous. The burl soaks it up, and it is a food grade boiled linseed oil because it's stuff I've made myself. If you want to see how to do that, I have videos on making your own boiled linseed oil. It is a very delightful finish for woodworking. Brings out all the color, and just gorgeous. The next thing I need to do is let it dry a little bit. I'm going to let it dry by putting it into its own wood curls. And these wood curls will allow it to dry a little bit slower. As the curls dry, they absorb some of the moisture from the bowl. And I let it sit like this for about 3 days. And I ended up losing about 3 ounces of moisture out of it. It will need to dry a good bit more, but for now this will do. Then for the last coat on it, I'm going to come in here with feed and wax. This is wax and honey and a few other things that I like the way it polishes out and leaves a fairly nice shine. I'll end up doing about 3 coats of this over a few days and letting it dry. And wow, I love the burl, and it's just a crazy amount of figure. Very, very beautiful. I love a little bit of left a little bit of live edge on there, and I am really, really happy. So there you have it. Turning a wood bowl between centers, having a little bit of fun, and I really like how this came out. Now it's going to crack. because I turned it very thin and I turned it to its final dimension while it's still wet. And that's perfectly fine. I'm expecting the cracks. I'm wanting the cracks. It's kind of the ethos to this with having the rough grain and all the burling on this. I mean, just the color, and this is a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of burl. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. So if you haven't noticed, this is a collaboration with William Walker, a good friend of mine. It goes out of his house and we cut this in half, and so this is my half of it. And if you want to see what he does, he actually turns it on a power lathe, does it a bit differently. He is far more the accomplished bowl turner, so if you want to see more specifics about actually turning bowls, go take a look at his channel. I'll leave a link to that down below. As well as he's one of the 3 co-hosts, myself, Will, and Zach Herberholz are all on the Creators Collective, and we record live Thursday at 9 Eastern, 9 Central, 10 Eastern, something around that. I'll leave a link to that channel down below, and you can find out more if you'd like to actually see the podcast of the 3 of us. So this has been a lot of fun. I've been wanting to turn a bowl on the spring lathe for a while, and it really makes me thankful that I did in the past on a powered lathe. It's much, much easier on that, but very rewarding. Even if you're on a power lathe and you don't want to get all those extra things, you can still turn between centers the exact same way that I turned on the spring pole lathe. You can turn between centers and not have to have all that other equipment to complete a bowl. So I hope you like this video. It was a very interesting one for me, very fun, and I am in love with this cherry burl. It is going to be wild, especially once it thoroughly dries out. I've had it sitting for a little while, but it's probably got another 2 to 3 weeks to completely cure out, and I want to do it a little bit faster, try and get some of those cracks to work in, and we'll have some fun with that. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit like, go ahead and subscribe, check out Will's channel, and see our podcast as well. And that's about it. Until next time, have a wonderful day.